We've got a story here. If you've been following Nantucket, I know. There once was a gang in Nantucket. That's a good one. Do you remember way back when Ron DeSantis ships 2 planes of migrants to Martha's Vineyard and people lost their minds? Nantucket area, Martha's Vineyard. They're just like, this is a stunt. This is terrible. This is horrible. What is going on? Remember that? And then they, the court system there allowed the illegals to sue Ron DeSantis for sending them there. I don't even remember what that story was. Well, now that enough of the illegals are in Martha's Vineyard, got a whole bunch of arrests, and it's not looking pretty. What does that look like? ICE has arrested 5, and that's not good. Yeah, ICE has arrested 5 on Nantucket on charges of including sex crimes and assault and battery. The men are now in custody and facing a slew of charges after the multi-day operation. So we're going to go through that. We're also going to go through, ICE recently released the numbers of, the illegals that are known for committing a whole bunch of crimes and the categories of that. And now you're seeing major pushback in mainstream media saying, yeah, those numbers are misrepresentative. We're going to get into that as well. We've got a couple of good articles on that. So you've got all this narrative and, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, that's data that's been collected over the last 40 years. And some of those people are actually in prison. I don't feel any better. You know what I mean? And then you've got stories like this. ICE is exactly what I'm looking at right here. ICE has arrested 5 on Nantucket on charges including sex crimes and assault and battery. And some of them involved little kids. That's what you got going on. So however you want to smooth out the data and make it, Trump is saying crazy stuff again. Well, the numbers are true, and whether or not, we'll just get into it, okay? Here we go. So we're going to watch a quick little video here. This is one of the U.S. Border Patrol chief. Watch a quick little video here. This is kind of some background that I thought was super interesting.
Are the smugglers setting the rules of engagement here?
Yes, they absolutely are. They dictate what the flow is going to look like, and we respond to it. Now we try and get out in front of it and deny them the ability to use these areas, especially ones that we think are going to be dangerous for us and for the migrants. But at the end of the day, there's over 1,900 miles of border with Mexico. Now, when you talk about 20,000 Border Patrol agents, that sounds like a lot. But when you multiply that by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week across the entirety of the year, that number starts to dwindle very fast. And that's exactly what they'll do. The tactic is they'll push groups across knowing that we're going to respond from a humanitarian perspective and make sure that they're safe. And while we're tied up and occupied doing this, what are they doing a couple miles down the road?
Are you concerned about that, about the potential dangerous people or potential terrorists who may be infiltrating the country because you are so focused on processing asylum seekers, families, and others who are in distress?
Absolutely. That's you ask any law enforcement officer, especially somebody that works in border security, that is what keeps us up at night. We're at closing in on 1 million entries this fiscal year alone. That number is a large number, but what's keeping me up at night is the 140,000 known gotaways.
That is not part of that tally.
That is not part of that tally. And that's just what we know.
Is that a national security risk?
That is a national security threat. Border security is a big piece of national security. And if we don't know who is coming into our country and we don't know what their intent is, that is a threat. And they're exploiting a vulnerability that's on our border right now.
You mentioned that there has been a dramatic shift in the demographics along the border. We met migrants from Peru, Ecuador, Nepal, Burkina Faso, Mauritania. How are people from Nepal and...
So that's a CBS interview from last March. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because you've got this gotaway. It's an actual category. You've got this gotaway of folks that have come in illegally into the country and literally gotten away. And there's like 2 million of them. 2 million, 1.9 million ICE just indicated. Yeah, can't really work out where they are. Well, they're gotaways. They're in the country. The numbers we've had released by ICE, you've got these huge numbers. And yet what I keep talking about is if you allow 7 million people into the country on a percentage basis, maybe a handful out of that 7 million are going to be bad hombres, right? Rapists, stealing your car, murdering people. Well, we know we've got 13,000 murderers and we know we've got 15,000 rapists. So when you bring in 7 million, and even if it's just a small, tiny fraction of that, you're going to have a whole bunch of folks that are up to no good. And that, my friends, is what you've got going in Nantucket. There was once a gang in Nantucket. Let's get to it. Nantucket ICE arrests show why gotaway migrants keep Border Patrol chief up at night. That was our guy we just watched. So he talks about the gotaways. Yep. And this is literally his quote. What's keeping me up at night? Known gotaways. Are they risking their lives and crossing in areas where we can't get to? Why are they doing this? Because if they caught him, they would be deported more than likely, right? Because they've got records. They've got all this stuff. And so now those folks are in Nantucket and they're even being arrested for these crimes and they're not being deported. They're being bailed out and they're going back into the community. Let's start with this one. So this is a breakdown of the most current. Yeah, I think you guys can read most of that. Angel Gabriel Durares Meja. He arrested a 30-year-old El Salvadorian national who had entered at an unknown place and time without inspection in Nantucket. His illegal entry should have been sufficient for officers to nab him under the whatever act, but not under restrictions placed on immigration enforcement by Alejandro Mayorkas. And that's what a lot of this is about, is you've created these sanctuary cities that have policy of not turning folks over to ICE, even though they've committed crazy criminal acts like raping kids. Yeah. And then Alejandro Mayorkas, he's like, they're all good people. They're all good people. I mean, we just got to let them all in. It's like, yeah, but that is just, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Simply being here illegally is not enough for the secretary. ICE officers must first wait until an illegal entrant commits a serious crime, and even then can't act before first determining that the offender doesn't suffer from some ailment or have any relatives who work for the government. Fortunately, this guy gave officers plenty to work with, at least according to ICE. He's a documented member of MS-13. Oh, that's great. That's great. And has been arrested by Nantucket police in late August for 2 counts of assault and battery on a household member and disorderly conduct. We move on to Felix Alberto Perez Gomez. He was announced that ICE officers there arrested 41-year-old Guatemalan national Felix, yet another alien gotaway. He has quite the rap sheet. He entered here illegally when he was first arrested by ICE in June of 2011. After he was stopped for reckless driving and then some other stuff, he was ordered removed and deported. And then he came back in August. Perez Gomez was arraigned in state district court in Nantucket for indecent assault and battery on a person 14 years or older. And ICE ERO officers took him into custody yet again. The facts of the offense, which have been charged, aren't clear, but Massachusetts law defines assault and battery on 114 and older as indecent when and if it involves touching portions of the anatomy commonly thought private. Oh, that's sweet. ICE claims that he was charged with sex crimes against a Nantucket resident. Elmer Sola reported that officers had arrested Elmer Sola, a 49-year-old Salvadorian national facing 11 state child sex charges, 3 counts of aggravated rape of a child, and 8 counts of indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. Nice. All right. So he unlawfully entered the United States, then made his way into our Nantucket community before allegedly committing some horrific and despicable crimes against a child. Sounds like a pretty reasonable mission statement to me. Perhaps Secretary Mayorkas may want to add it as an addendum to his September 21 immigration enforcement guidelines, meaning, hey, if you rape a child in the United States, maybe you get deported. Maybe that is something that, you need to include within Reasons for deportation. Jean Do Amaro Bellafronte. He entered as a gotaway migrant. He came to the United States in unspecified status in October 2018. He was voluntarily deported in April 2021. He got back into the country, and then less than 2 months after he departed, charging him with indecent assault and battery on a person 14 years of age. Same sort of sex crime Perez Gomez was arrested for. This is all in Nantucket. Very small, wealthy, liberal community. The same community that just got all worked up when Ron DeSantis, let's fly a couple of plane loads of immigrants into Nantucket and we'll just see how that goes. It did not go over well. Nantucket police eventually found the Brazilian national in March and arrested him, only to have the district court release him on bail 3 days later. Oh, yeah. See, you raped one of our children here. Yeah, you seem like a pretty nice guy. Yeah, we believe in you. So get out there, Tiger, and maybe hold off on the whole, R-wording of our minors. Plainly, ICE Aero Boston considered Bellafronte to be a danger and a flight risk, even if the court didn't, because its officers took him into custody on September 11th. This all happened last month. It's October now. It's crazy, right? What happened to summer? Where he remained as one of the office's September 17 press release. He's in custody. Brian Daniel Aldana Arevalo. So this guy, 1 count of rape of a child with a 10-year age difference and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. Great. Nantucket District Court released Aldana on bail July 29th. See the pattern here? That's just insanity. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are an illegal. Therefore, we'll just go ahead, bail you out. I'm sure you'll be fine in the community. Don't these folks pose an absolute flight risk getting out of the country? Isn't that taken into consideration? Hey, they're illegal. They committed a horrific crime. And now they're going to bounce. They're going to bounce the same way they came in, which is illegally. They're going to bounce out, same deal, or no. I mean, we don't know, right? Because oftentimes when they come back around and finally arrest these folks, they're still hanging out because they're like, hey, we bounced the first time and you guys didn't deport us. Why would we even leave? I mean, the whole thing is just so upside down. Again, why exactly the state released an illegal immigrant charged with child rape and other offenses is not clear. And the reason it's not clear is because it's insane. But Boston ICE Aero considered him a big enough threat to take Aldana Arevalo into custody and hold him pending removal proceedings. Hey, yeah, you know what? You rape a U.S. citizen that's underage and like 10 years old, we're going to have to deport you. Yeah, you have met the threshold for deportation. So you got 4 aliens charged with child sex crimes, and then you got 1 documented gang member, all within Nantucket, within the Martha's Vineyard area. I remember growing up, my grandma was always talking about Martha's Vineyard. We had some connection there. And that was back in the days when it was just, I think, conservative. I never paid much attention to that because that was like an East Coast thing. I'm a West Coast kid. I'm a Seattle kid. I'm like, yeah, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. Well, as I've grown up as an adult, it is just a liberal bastion filled with people with a lot of money. I mean, Obama's got, a multi-million-dollar residence there. The list of people that go to Nantucket to vacation, summer, in Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, whatever they do. This kind of stuff here is literally rocking the community. They're like, oh, my goodness, how did that come about? What? We've got people raping our children? Are you kidding me? How did this happen? I don't understand. I mean, it's wildly obvious, right? I mean, we've been following this story and you got millions of people coming into the country. And how many times have I said this? And I'm a guy from Seattle and we just don't get as many. Because the southern border, it's pretty far south. And if you bring 7 million people into the country and you got another couple million gotaways, let's round it up to 10 million. And, very small percentage are bad people. Let's give them that. They're not all murderers, rapists, and steal your car. No. But just based on numbers alone, you're going to have these crazy numbers, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists and, car thieves and assault and, traffic violations. The number of people that have been convicted of a crime is like 600,000. That includes a bunch of small little crimes, right? But the big crimes, and that doesn't include anybody that's come into the country under that 1.9 million of gotaways. So, when you've got a couple million people coming in that are coming in purposely, illegally, because they don't want to get caught, because if somebody runs who they are, they're going to get deported because they've got something on their rap sheet that is going to meet the threshold. You know what I mean? Just the numbers alone, you're left thinking, yeah, this isn't good. This isn't a good deal. So the Insider's Guide to Nantucket describes the place as a town, a county, and an island. Unfortunately, it's also become a haven for 4 aliens charged with child sex crimes and a documented MS-13 member. So let's skip on to, this was the big story, right? Went free on bail before ICE could nab him. Local authorities in Massachusetts allowed an illegal migrant accused of raping a preteen child to walk free on bail and never called immigration authorities. That, to me, is simply irresponsible and wildly reckless. So if you are a resident of Nantucket, if you are a resident of anywhere close to here, these are folks that you've outvoted in. And these are the folks that you thought, hey, this is a good idea, bringing this person into public office, and let's put this judge in charge. Well, how's that working out for you? How is that working out for you? I mean, how do you release somebody on bail on this kind of thing and they're illegal? I mean, it's mind-blowing, right? And yet it's been happening over and over and over again. We're not even talking today. We haven't even mentioned Tren de Aragua uno time, right? We haven't talked about that whole thing just going on. So you've got this issue here in Nantucket. You've got, you've got the whole Colorado deal. You got Aurora, Colorado. I mean, you've got El Paso, Texas, where you've got Tren de Aragua. I mean, all of those storylines are kind of coming out, and it's like, oh, okay, here's how that happens. Here's how that happens. Here's how this one happened. So this one goes on to talk about, so this kid who's 28 was charged on July 26th on the Nantucket, 1 count of rape of a child with a 10-year age difference and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. 3 days later, released by Nantucket District Court. ICE officers ultimately arrested him on September 10th after tracking him down. Yeah, Nantucket District Court, we'll go out and do your dirty work for you. Why'd you release him in the first place? What a knuckleheaded move. But we shouldn't be too surprised, because this is business as usual for these big liberal bastions that have identified one way or the other as sanctuary cities, counties, states, and they think that turning these folks over is, a bad thing. We just want to help them out. And you're left thinking, okay, how is coming into the country illegal and then raping one of our children a good thing? Spin that for me. Literally spin that for me. How is that a good thing? I'm listening. I mean, you know what I mean? There's no way you can spin that. Well, maybe we can reform him down the road. And, prison's good for some people. He's in federal custody awaiting his day in immigration court. ICE Boston Field Office Director Todd M. Lyons called Aldana Aravello's alleged crimes both detestable and disturbing. You think? There's all these stories going on out there in mainstream media. You know what their reaction is just like, oof, yeah, oof. Maybe it'll go away. This isn't going away. This is only going to get worse, because these folks are in the country, and the longer they're in their country, and if they're a child predator, these stories are going to come up. Now, clearly, huge percentage of the folks that have come into the country have kids, they're families, they're trying to work hard, they're trying to get that piece of the American dream. But, and here's everything that, moving forward, based on numbers alone, you can't say that everybody's a good person. And that's why this whole vetting process, or lack thereof, of vetting folks has been so detrimental. And you really need to ratchet down that southern border. I mean, and I think that is happening, but there has been such a movement worldwide to basically bring people into the country, into the United States illegally. That to me is like, all right, this is happening on purpose. And why is that? That's the question of the hour, right? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the live chat why you think this is happening. Destabilization of United States society. All right. Biden-Harris. I mean, the whole Biden-Harris reaction to this deal has been just horrific. And that's why mainstream media doesn't want to cover these topics. They don't want to take a hard look at them, because now you've got round 2 with Harris running for president. I'm sure this will work out. And she is literally taking a stance of, I was tough as I was tough prosecuting criminals then, and I'm tough on, I'll be tough on the immigrants now. It's like, no, that's not what you've done. Your boss just basically opened that southern border wide open until it got so bad in Q4 of 2023 that it was such a bad look that he actually did something about it, going the other direction, right? So, the last guy we talked to made his way to the island of Nantucket after sneaking into the U.S. from El Salvador. The number of migrants who have evaded apprehension by border agents, often referred to gotaways, has skyrocketed. In this article, it says more than 1.7 million migrant gotaways are known to have entered during this administration, but it's closer to 1.9 million is what they're literally saying. Okay, so here's the big stories coming out. Is fear grips Nantucket amid migrant crime spike. A lot of bad people. Well, it may not be a lot of bad people, because we're talking about 5 individuals here. But what's interesting is that, the child sex crimes, 4 of them, and then illegal, and a handful of them have been they've been released into the community on bail. And the local judges have just said, we're going to give you a court date, and we're going to have you come on back in, even though you're not a legal citizen. Could you imagine if a United States citizen, look at some of the examples of, what's happened to United States citizens in other parts of the world. North Korea and China, Russia. Brittany and whatever her name was, basketball player in Russia. They just look for the smallest thing. And, there's a pawn in our political game. Let's tag her. We'll have her, Brittany Griner. We'll have her as we'll trade her for a Russian arms dealer. This should work out fine. Some Nantucketers say they don't feel as safe as they once did after a handful of illegal migrants accused of sex crimes and assault there were seized by ICE. Oh. Huh. Okay. So now you're getting a little feel for what the southern states have been enduring for literally ever, right? After a slew of illegal immigrants were nabbed on the island for sex crimes and assault, many residents fear their home has changed forever. And it goes on to talk about what we just talked about here. And you've got a lot of seasonal workers in Nantucket. 41.5% of the students in Nantucket's public schools speak a language other than English at home. So you've got a big migrant community. And, while the vast majority of those folks probably are trying to integrate because they don't want to get bumped out and they're not committing crimes, there's that certain percentage that are like, hey, we can come in and do whatever we want. We can hang out with our crew here that are legally working, trying to get their residency. We're never going to get residency because, number one, we've got a history of this kind of activity and we're probably going to get deported. But if the sanctuary cities aren't going to deport us, world's our oyster. Hey, I'll let the you-know-whating begin. I've lived here for 53 years. I've seen a large uptick in crime. I've never seen this kind of child abuse that I've seen in the last several years. a man in his 70s who asked not to be named, sat outside one of the 2 Nantucket grocery stores. I never knew where the keys to our house were. Now I have security cameras. This is an interesting one. And this is the perspective that I was kind of thinking of when I'm talking to my grandmother who passed away at age 93 during the pandemic. That was horrific. She was in a nursing home, and she died alone because, if we go in there, we would have spread just the whole thing. That was just horrific. So what this guy is saying is when I moved here to Nantucket in the 70s, Nantucket was a very conservative spot. You had wealthy folks that were conservative there. It just was. Now, most of the U.S.-born people are entirely liberal here. We have good friends that we cannot talk politics with, the man said. That sound familiar? Yeah. Right? It's crazy. And so now this story comes up in a wildly liberal bastion, limousine liberals, people with a lot of money driving around in their limousines and, boating on their massive yachts and then talking about climate change, getting on their jet, getting on their helicopter that lands on their yacht. And then, we need to do something about the environment. Yeah, you and your carbon footprint. I find that to be wildly just like you're talking about have you looked at your carbon footprint? They don't want to face realities, talking about folks that he can't have political discussions with. They don't want to face the realities. The reality is that the open border has created an influx of undocumented people. As the statistics came out, there's a rampant amount of crime. He was referring to the ICE data released to lawmakers this week. The response is, what can we do about it? And when I said, send them back, it was scoffed at. He responded, that's the whole thing, right? Well, what do you want us to do about they're here now? And you're like, well, how about we deport them? Oh, good Lord, that sounds extreme. Well, isn't that kind of the answer? Isn't that kind of what Trump has been saying? Hey, day one of my presidency, I'm going to deport 8 million of these illegals. And you're like, no, you're not. No, you're not. But you're saying that because that gets the base riled up. That'll never happen. That'll never happen. Some of them will be deported. Some of them should be deported. And that's what we're talking about today. The folks that came here and are working their way through, I mean, you know what I mean? Because the United States is based on immigration, right? New York City, that's the way the whole thing's been developed. My grandparents were immigrants from Scotland to Australia, and then my mom immigrated to the United States. And, everybody's a mutt of some sorts. And so I'm not trying to hammer on any specific groups. But when you haven't vetted folks the way that you probably should, as immigration goes, other countries don't just allow people to come into the country just willy-nilly. Australia holds them off island. Yeah, you can't come in. And Biden literally took that remain in Mexico policy and just said, nope, we're not doing that. Parole them into the country. Let's bring 10 million, 15 million in, and we don't even know what that number is. We have no idea because with so many gotaways, we just don't know. So, John Cladd, who works with Toscana Excavation, told Fox News Digital that he was glad ICE made the arrests earlier this month. Just the fact that you have to have somebody saying, hey, I'm glad ICE made arrests. There's this discussion of, well, I shouldn't be making any arrests at all. And that's because we've gone down this road of, ICE, they just willy-nilly take people and toss them out of the country. ICE isn't doing that. They're just not doing that. They're only getting the worst of the worst because that's basically all that they have manpower for to be able to do this, because there are so many people coming across what has been an absolutely porous southern border. 302,000 illegals came across the border in December of 2023. 302,000. Right? And if you think a certain percentage of that 302,000 wasn't bad guys, I mean, you got people streaming in from Venezuela. And they dumped out the prisons there, dumped out the mental. Their society has just crumbled and people are leaving left and right. Now, a lot of those are families with kids. Absolutely. I give them that. but not all of them are. And a big percentage are, single, young, military-aged men. What are they doing? Yeah, good questions, right? Good questions. All right. So here's another one. Nantucket parents fear for children amid spike in migrant crime. As a father, it truly scares me. Well, maybe you should have thought of that when, the southern states started shipping folks out and you started allowing these folks to come into your community. You're going to have a certain percentage that are bad eggs. Bad eggs. Yeah. And now they're raping your children. So that's just how this works. It's a numbers game, folks. I mean, it's reality. It's just this reality. And even if it's a tiny, tiny percentage out of 7 million, 1.9 million gotaways, that's a lot of folks. And that's why you're seeing these stories proliferate. Laken Riley being an excellent example. Mainstream media didn't want to cover that because then you're going to have to admit that some of these people, you know what? It's hard to admit, but they're not all teetotalers going to church singing Kumbaya in massive groups. Some of them, got a little Tren de Aragua action. Some of them, MS-13, gang system. All right, let's get into our next one here. ICE numbers. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is these numbers have come out and you've got these stories going on. So here is what mainstream media and anybody on the left is going to say in defense of these numbers being brought to light and folks saying, hey, there's a reason you've got this kind of criminal stuff going on. And this is due to just straight up numbers. All right. ICE numbers cited by Trump and other Republicans being misconstrued. Here's what they show. So you're going to see article after article after article, talking head talk about, that's not accurate. We've already proven that's not accurate. It's like ABC during the presidential debate. That has been debunked. That has been debunked about the Haitians eating, Fluffy the cat and dogs for dinner and ducks for dinner. Well, all they had done is sent somebody to the community and stuck a microphone in front of a Haitian's, face and said, hey, are you eating the dogs here in Springfield? Are you eating And the guy's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, all right, debunked. This isn't quite as bad as that, but this is what you're going to hear. Republicans are pointing to newly released immigration enforcement data to bolster their argument that the Biden administration is letting migrants who have committed serious crimes go free in the U.S., but the numbers have been misconstrued with key context. Immigration and Customs Enforcement released data to Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez in response to a request he made for information about the 800-mile stretching border. And what are the numbers? 662,556 people under its supervision were either convicted of crimes or face criminal charges. 662,000. That could be as simple as a traffic offense, okay? So not all of them are knife-wielding, gun-wielding murderers or, hey, little boy, I got some candy. Come in my white van, my black van, whatever it might be. Nearly 15,000 were in custody, but the vast majority, 647,000, were not. And what we've got, 13,000 and change for murder, for homicide. 15,000, nearly 16,000 for sexual assault, 13,000 for weapons, 2,600 for stolen vehicles. The single biggest category was for traffic-related offenses at 77,000, followed by assault. Oh, that's good. It didn't kill anybody, but man, I sure hit him hard. 62,000 and dangerous drugs at 56,000. All kinds of things you don't want in your community, but you're going to get, especially if you're like Nantucket, and this is what you get, right? Department of Homeland Security, which oversees ICE, later clarified that the numbers span decades and those not in its custody may be held by a state or a local agency. Okay. Do you feel better now? Yeah. Well, that's over a long period of time, Sean. Okay. That means they're still here, right? Am I right? They're still here, number one. And they might be in prison or local jail or something. All right. So taxpayers' dollars are paying for them. Our taxpayers' dollars are paying for them. And they've been convicted of a crime. Why aren't we deporting them? Right? Yeah, because they've got to serve their crime and then we'll deport them. Okay. What isn't clarified here is exactly what those numbers look like. Okay. So of these numbers we just ran through, what percentage are in prison? What percentage happened 20 years ago? What percentage happened most recently? And you know what? It doesn't really matter because these stories are happening. And the story I'm reading to you today about Nantucket, that is in real time. So this whole argument of, well, John, that's been debunked. Those numbers have been debunked. Okay. No, not really. Not really. Because those folks are still in the country one way or the other. And maybe it happened over a long period of time. Okay, I don't feel any better. You still got 15,000, almost 16,000 people convicted of sex crimes. So they've been here for 30 years. Oh, wow. I mean, okay. All right. So now you got a 60-year-old rapist. Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm down with that. I mean, why wouldn't I be? Yeah. Cause as people age out, they're just not going to be. How old were some of the folks that we talked about there? Yeah. They were not young people, right? They were not young people. So millions of people are on ICE's non-detained docket or people under the agency's supervision who aren't in its custody. Many are awaiting outcomes of their cases in immigration court, including some wearing monitoring devices. I feel so much better. Others have been released after completing their prison sentences because their countries won't take them back. Venezuela, perfect example of China. China isn't taking them back. Venezuela, we have zero diplomatic relationship with Venezuela because they've basically broken down, right? They've basically just broken down as a society. So we have to be the good guys and take them? I mean, really? Is that how this game is played? Apparently so. Oh, I just feel like we're just I hate to use we're total weenies. How about that? We're weenies. Get rid of them. I don't care where you send them. If somebody commits a crime, just out. Let Mexico deal with them. They came through Mexico. Let Mexico deal with them. I don't know what the answer is. But Republicans pointed to the data as proof the Biden administration is letting immigrants with criminal records into the country, which is true. Period. Full stop. They are. And isn't doing enough to kick out those who commit crimes while they're here. Did we not just read a story about Nantucket? There once was a man in Nantucket, right? Who committed crimes and then were released based on bail? I mean, we are literally reading this in real time. The truth is clear. Illegal immigrants with a criminal record are coming into our country. Data released by ICE is beyond disturbing, and it should be a wake-up call for the Biden-Harris administration and cities across the country that hide behind sanctuary policies. Is Eric Adams in New York City, is he being prosecuted because he went against the whole sanctuary city and said, hey, we're not going to have enough money to keep all of these illegals here. We need to not take in as many illegals. He went against the Biden-Harris administration as far as their whole immigration stance. He said, no, we can't do this. We got to stop. We need some federal money up in here. And so now Eric Adams, and I've done live streams on that, he's been charged with a bunch of stuff that goes back to 2016. And I've been kind of thinking about that. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people want to say he's being persecuted because of his stance on immigration. Does that make sense? I don't know. There's a bunch of unknowns in that storyline. The fact that Eric Adams is being prosecuted for all that stuff, and he only got discounted airfare, maybe some free hotel rooms. And they're going to, run him down for that over, since 2016. It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? It just doesn't. Now, one of the things that I always think of is, Eric Adams, why are you risking your career to get some discounted, airfare and hotel? And you made it kind of obvious. Did you think you were going to get away with that? I mean, whole thing. But a lot of folks, I'm seeing a lot of comments saying it happened because he went against the Democrat status quo of we want to bring as many illegals into the country as is humanly possible, and this is just what we're doing. And he took a stance on that and said, well, we're getting overrun here. And it was interesting to see his stance versus Let's Go Brandon Johnson's stance in Chicago. Let's Go Brandon Johnson just immediately went to, we need federal money. And oh, hey, yeah, don't come to Chicago. Crazy, right? All right. So here's the last kind of little deal. Jean-Pierre says ICE data showing 13,000 illegal immigrant murderers, convicts are in U.S. is confusing Americans. Is it? Is it really confusing Americans? I don't think it is. I think Americans can read. And she is stating, Corinne Jean-Pierre claims Border Patrol data is being misrepresented. She is doing the same thing. White House Press Secretary Jean-Corinne Pierre was pressed by Fox News Senior White House Peter Doocy. I love that guy. That guy just, the nicest smile on his face, and he'll ask the, kind of a pointed question, and she comes back with just a non-answer. So Peter Doocy on the news that tens of thousands of illegal immigrants in the U.S. have serious criminal records. Jean-Pierre responded to the line of questioning about the Border Patrol numbers by claiming it was a false representation of the data. No, it wasn't. You need to read the entire report for full context, the entire kind of letter indicating what that looks like. Doocy said 13,000 people have been convicted of murder across the border illegally or now living among us. So how much danger are U.S. communities in right now? And she comes back with, I think it's important to correct the record here. It's been fact-checked by some of your colleagues here by multiple outlets. It's been debunked on what has been falsely misrepresented here. So we have to call that out. And what they're going to say is, hey, some of them are in prison, and this took place over a long period of time. Doocy responded, can you clarify what the misrepresentation is? Jean-Pierre responded, if we're going to report something, data that's out there, we got to do it in a way that's not confusing the American people and certainly not lying. I don't think anybody's lying. The only thing I could think of is some things that Trump has said, where he has basically said all of those numbers are attributed to the current administration. That might be a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but politics, right? Politics are dirty. So we're going to go down that road. But I think most Americans can look at this and go, okay, even if a handful of those folks, of the 15,000 and change rapists, are in jail, even if, it's still not good. Any which way you look at this, it's not good. Because these are folks that shouldn't be in the United States, period. Full stop. If you look at the total returns and removal the past year, that's been higher than every year under the previous administration since 2010, she said, reiterating claims the story has been fact-checked and falsely represented. Okay, let's look at that sentence alone here, okay? Because we can just shred that one. If you look at the total returns and removal of the past year, it's been higher than every year under the previous administration because you let record numbers of people into the country illegally. And then you're going to deport them. You bring a bigger percentage number in, you cut a certain percentage and you toss them out. That's because you started with a much bigger pie. I mean, she is not a smart individual. I'm sorry. You don't want to be harsh on people, but she is just, you watch her talk and you're like, she is probably one of the worst press secretaries I have ever seen. She is so not intelligent. If you can't say something nice, don't say it at all. She lacks the ability to do her job, period. Right? Out of 7.4 million people on that docket, 425 are convicted criminals and 222,000 have pending criminal charges. Okay, so we know we got 222,000 people with pending criminal charges of the millions that the Biden administration has let in. Do you feel better? No, because end result, there once was a man in Nantucket. There once was a gang in Nantucket. I always think of Andrew Dice Clay, Hickory Decree dog. However, Andrew Dice Clay came up with that. So this article goes on to, reiterate those numbers that we just talked about. Bottom line is you've got a bunch of folks in the country that shouldn't be here that are committing crimes against U.S. citizens. And some of them are very young, and some of them are in liberal bastions like Nantucket. All right. I don't see any other way to spin this. This is it. This is what you got. This is what's happening. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for supporting the stream. I will catch up with you in the next one. We got some good stuff coming up. Make sure you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.